On a cool April 11th morning in 1912, Samantha Parkington Edwards, Nellie O'Malley Edwards, with Aunt Cornelia, Agnes, Agatha, Bridget, and Jenny board the ship back home from England after doing a grand ladies' vacation to get away from the hustle and bustle of New York for the week of Easter. The ship was taking them home was the newest and most talked about ship, RMS Titanic. The ladies cheered, waving goodbye to England with their hankies in hand and looking forward to seeing Uncle Guard with young Samuel, more than likely playing with Jip and driving Gertrude crazy.
You've just heard a truly stunning teaser to an amazing fanfic we received from one of our listeners that is a truly prized submission to our Guard Zine, Uncle Guard Zine, which is now available on our website. We'll also put a link into the show notes of this episode. We just want to thank everyone who submitted to the zine. It's truly incredible. We have amazing artwork. We have memes. We have collage. We have fan fiction. We have writing about your first car, a listicle about the Henry Ford Museum. Like, it's all happening in this zine. So please check it out. And now that I've gotten that amazing promo out of the way, welcome everyone to American Girls, the podcast. This is the podcast where we'll be reliving the American Girls series book by book. I'm Mary.
You'll learn on this episode that I'm other Allison.
Wow. Still not over that, huh?
So this episode features a really amazing interview with Professor Allison Lang. And in the course of this episode, you will hear me refer to as other Allison as opposed to still Allison. So it's a bit of a shock for all of us. But this month of October 2020, we have nailed these huge interviews. We have Professor Lang in this episode, and then we talked to Anne Helen Peterson in our later episode. So it's just such a month for us.
Yeah, I mean, we're so lucky that we got to talk to these incredible guests. So we're so excited to share these conversations with you.
And I want to say a special thank you to listener Danny, whose fan fiction was read by our really good friend Eric. As you mentioned, Danny really graciously allowed us to share and do this kind of fun interpretation with their work at the start of the episode.
And we couldn't think of a better person to read a Guard-centered piece than our dear friend Eric, who routinely wears three-piece suits as a teacher. He is the most stylish person that I'm friends with, like not even close. And as I told Allison, like this feels like karma, destiny, kismet, because when Eric was defending his dissertation, I got the flu and Steffi the Saturn died on the same day. So I could not attend his dissertation, which is something I still feel bad about. But it's very exciting for us that he's here.
And Eric's a teacher, and we're not going to do the hero discourse, but teachers are really amazing for everything that they're doing right now. And we just really want to support him and everyone else who's in the classroom, in their house, trying to teach from anywhere. And Eric does it in a three-piece suit. So thank you, Eric. And thank you, Danny.
Thank you. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Eric. In the words of our heroes, thank you for being a friend.
Yes. Honestly, there is so much to say about the Guard Zine, but I want people to really explore it on their own. And we had so much fun talking to Allison.
We did. And, this is like a dream episode of ours for a while. Like we became acquainted with Allison after we were so lucky to get to do an event with her about her book a few months ago. And, we've been planning this ever since. So it was a conversation that I was really looking forward to because obviously we're living through the suffrage centennial and there's so much to say about it. And it's really nice to have like the expert or like one of the top experts to kind of guide the conversation or at least engage us as we throw any and all questions at her.
Yeah, let's get right to it.
This episode is brought to you by Podcorn.
Podcorn is a marketplace connecting podcasters to advertisers for native podcast sponsorships.
What does that actually mean? Well, for our purposes, it means that we don't have to run ads on our show for products and services we don't believe in. We take this community really seriously, so we've in an ongoing way been trying to match with products that actually meet our mission and our values and are things that we're proud to support. So Podcorn has been a really wonderful service where we've been able to log on to their site and find a bunch of advertisers who want to work with us that we're excited to work with as well.
If you're a creator and you're looking for brands that you might want to work with, Podcorn is a great option. They have a marketplace mission to give podcasters transparency, creative freedom, and control, and you never give up exclusive rights to your podcast. Click the link in our show notes to learn how to sign up and to learn more about Podcorn.
That's right. So just head over to podcorn.com and get started today. Okay, everyone, and before we jump into this episode, we just want to say a very special shout out to a very special listener, Allison Lang's mom. Thank you so much for listening to all of our episodes. We're so appreciative. And we just want to give everyone a heads up that at the end of the episode, we're going to be giving a very special first anniversary shout out and giving some exciting information about an update to our store and some information about our Patreon. So stay tuned. Allison's, like, what a lucky day for me that I'm sitting here with two of my favorite Allisons who both luckily spell it the same way. So we won't have to deal with Allison H going at Allison Lang about how she spells her name. So thank you. Thank you for that.
I am so glad that, my mother always said that the reason that she spelled it the way she did was so that it was easy to spell because she was a teacher. So this was kind of, she wanted a standard spelling of Allison. So clearly the correct one.
I feel like Allison is such a name of our generation. Like there are so many Allisons compared to now. Like I don't know many like children Allisons, but then again, maybe I just don't know many kids.
It could be both.
Is that your sense?
Yes. There were 5 in my high school graduating class, and I have met so few since, truthfully.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah, actually, I don't think I had many in my high school, but since then, yeah, I don't have too many Allison friends.
Interesting. Now you have another one.
Just the right one.
Just her. And I should also add, we're being joined tonight by Allison's suffragette cat, who is in the background. I see her.
If I may, Mary, she is a suffragist. I don't mean to.
Oh my God.
No,
Excuse me. I'm so sorry.
No,
I'm so embarrassed.
I only want to be clear about where she's from. And because that was a question that we got as to whether one is a suffragist or a suffragette.
Right.
So honestly, when you look at Nabby quickly, like, oh, she's English. She's very dignified. She's a suffragette.
Sure.
But she's been very clear to me that she is a suffragist.
Yep.
So she is an American girl, American cat, and she's named after Abigail Adams.
I just was really focusing on not noting her physical appearance. Like I didn't want to say she was hot because I've read Allison Lang's book and I know about the transition in suffragist visual culture where early 20th century, like we start to think about them as beautiful as opposed to late 19th century. Allison, am I wrong here? Is that fair?
You're correct. You're correct.
So that was on my mind, but I'm sorry for what I know just did.
None of us
Allison,
want to.
I'm sorry you have to watch
Nabby.
this. This is embarrassing, but what a way to start the show. But Allison, I mean, my Allison, I'm happy you're here too. Whatever. Moving on from that. Allison Lang, I can't believe you're here on the show finally. I mean, I feel like we're friends. I don't know if that's fair.
I think it's fair.
I mean, Allison told me she's texting with you and like, I don't have your phone number. So that feels like a awkward power imbalance. So I'm just going to put that out there, but thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm so excited to talk to both of you. I think your work is amazing. I think that, there are a bunch of women's historians who have, had this path to this field. And I think that it's really fun to chat about it.
I mean, we're so excited to get into it. Allison, do you want to kick us off? Like, where do you want to begin?
I would love to. Also, you made me sound very desperate for friendship by saying that I bragged about us texting, which I am. And it's fine.
No, I'm just saying, like, I don't have her phone number. Like,
also,
I felt excluded.
No, it's okay. I don't text with Jane Addams about Jane Addams with a lot of people, but when I do, it's very high level. So
The day you start texting with Jane Addams is when I come in and I put you somewhere just for your own safety.
Don't worry, Mary. You can have my number if we're going to rectify this power imbalance. Okay. That's what our work is about.
Thank you.
The power relations here.
100%. Thank you. I feel like Cornelia would give me your number too. I'm just going to say
I think she would.
For a few reasons.
And she would invite you to the next suffrage meeting.
I think she would. I mean, I don't know if she's my favorite, if she would have the effect on me that she had on Grandmary, which is sort of beyond belief that she converts Grandmary in one
just one speech.
One speech.
Beyond
It's impressive.
It is.
She was foreshadowing Eminem. She was like, one shot, one speech, one shot, Cornelia armed spaghetti. We are really excited to talk to you sort of about depictions of suffrage and the culture of suffrage that runs through Samantha, along with other things, because our listeners really had a lot of questions that I think you're best suited to answer about that culture. And just to kind of take us back, because I know you just did a really clean and fresh reread of Happy Birthday, Samantha. So if you can actually just fix your crown for your flower crown for a second. What rings true for you about Cornelia in rereading that book?
I think that she's kind of this early 20th century version of an ideal suffragist, right? She's this young woman. I don't think we know that she's well educated or not, but kind of probably she was. If we had to make a guess, she was probably educated at, one of these, elite women's colleges, but we can make the guess that she kind of became part of these suffrage organizations, learned how to speak from these suffrage leaders. And this was a moment when there were a ton of, outdoor speakers in a way. There are these fantastic photographs of suffragists speaking to crowds. And one of the things that was really different from the image that was in the book versus the images that I've seen is that a lot of those women speaking to crowds were speaking to groups of men, overwhelmingly men in the streets, whereas in Samantha's book, it's largely women, which is an interesting contrast. It's not necessarily wrong. I mean, there certainly would have been spaces where it would have been largely women at a meeting, for example, but a lot of the speeches given on a street corner in a public space, those were men and women. And there are some fantastic and fascinating pictures of women giving speeches and just totally surrounded, crowds of men surrounding them. And it even feels kind of intimidating when I look at a photograph like that.
Thinking of those pictures of the women they almost look like delivery trucks. And there's a famous one that's suffragettes go to Boston. That's how it's labeled. And honestly, it looks like they're at a middle school or a junior high because there's all these young men just throngs around the truck. And I think what's so smart about your work, because you look at visual culture, is what's happening in this photograph, right? There's just a lot of different things happening, but I think at first glance, your eyes are drawn to the women and to the truck. And then you start looking at all these kind of cheeky young men playing around. And I love few things more than the thought that might be the only picture they ever got to be in.
That we still have.
What a strange thing. Yeah. Oh, true. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fascinating point. I mean, this is a great moment to say, if you have photographs of your relatives, now's a good time to write their names down and write down as much as you know about them, because then when they get into the archives and someone like me goes in and is interested in finding suffrage history, for example, I found so many photographs that, don't have any names associated with them. We just know very little about them. They're still fascinating in their own way, but yeah, it's tough to get a lot from a photograph when you don't have any identifying information.
Do you have a case where, thinking about our listeners who are not professional historians, but are very interested in history and the practice of history? Something that I love hearing about is actually kind of the behind the scenes stuff. What does your research look like? So when you say there's a lot of photos that you find without names, do you have a case where you found a photo and you really wanted to know who the person was and you were able to figure it out? And how did you do it?
I wish. By the time photographs get to me, they've been largely curated by, professional librarians, archivists, and they have done a lot of the work of identifying the people in the photograph. So they are largely, and if they recognize, Susan B. Anthony in a photograph, they're most likely correct. Although I have found, I guess this reminds me that I have found a few where I'm like, I don't think that's actually Lucretia Mott, but not that many. But I have never been able to identify someone that wasn't previously identifiable. So unfortunately, no fabulous stories about that to share. But it's a real combination of digital research, because there's so many amazing photographs online now. And if people are interested in looking at them for themselves, one of the collections that led me to my work was the Library of Congress Women of Protest collection, which is all free, easily accessible online, and is kind of fun to go through.
So knowing what you know about Cornelia, right, that she gives this one speech and wins over sort of a woman of the previous generation, knowing how she presents herself, that she has some money, do you think she had what it would take between 1905 and 1920 to make it in the big leagues, right? Like, part of what you write about is women who are sort of celebrities, right? In a sort of very real and new way around the turn of the century. Does she have the talent? Does she have the look?
Wow.
I'm not trying to represent her, but like, do you think she would have had what she would need to get up there?
She would have fit in quite well. So she's a fairly well-off young woman. She presents herself as, pretty feminine. But I was looking at her speech, and the thing that she does not have is an actual argument, right? So she says,
shade.
We must vote. We must make up our own minds. And it's, not making an actual case for women voting. It's just stating that women should vote, which is not what the suffragists did.
But do you think maybe you're hitting on why Grand Mary was so moved by it? Because basically she was like, wow, that doesn't actually make me change my mind about anything, because she's not really asking me to do anything. So it's like, oh, well, if I just can think what I've been thinking now, fine, I'll support whatever this is, which you haven't really explained.
Yeah, I think that's possible, except that the suffragists, or a lot of the suffragists, especially white, middle and upper class suffragists under the National American Women's Suffrage Association, actually not only kind of said things will be the same, but things will be the same. Women will still be fantastic mothers and wives and contributors to, the household, and even better, like their roles as mothers and caregivers will be strengthened by the vote. So a lot of them were arguing that it would be the same, but more so.
Fair.
I'm not saying
Fair
a lot
enough.
of them believed that.
Yeah. Oh man. It's just, she's not super convincing. I mean, do you think Uncle Gard is a suffragist?
Yeah, I do. What do you guys
It's
think?
hard to say what he is.
Okay, here's why I think he is. Because some of my favorite stories about like women in cars and the suffrage movement, and I think he focuses on the car element. Like, he hears about the cross country trips.
Yes.
He hears about the big yellow ride, and he hears about those two women. He's like, my wife, he's like, I get it. I see it. I get it. He understands. No, he understands that the movement is queer. Like, he gets it. And I think he also sees the car trips, and that's something he can get behind. I'm being serious. Like, I think the car
agree.
has a huge role.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think that, one of the myths of the suffrage movement is that all these suffrage supporters were women, and that is absolutely not true. And the movement could not have succeeded without male supporters, like Gard.
Wow, a hero. Who knew?
Mary,
a hero of suffrage.
I
mean, I don't really know what this man stands for, unless it's like his love affair with cars, and certainly not Cornelia. I'll say that. There's no real great love story there that I can tell. And I think Valerie Tripp knew it and was like, I can't legally, like, just like being a true to myself author, I can't put this in the book, their wedding, because I won't, like, I can't stomach writing it. Like, it's not true.
Here's a question. Would you rather, Allison, write a spinoff that includes Teddy Roosevelt or Alice Roosevelt, and why?
Teddy Roosevelt. Alice Roosevelt is fascinating. I think my students are always fascinated by Theodore Roosevelt. And I think that his dramatic shift to support suffrage is really fascinating. And I think it would be compelling to a lot of people, even though I would secretly want to write about Alice Roosevelt for myself. I think there's a far broader audience of Theodore Roosevelt fans.
I think that's probably true. I mean, Alice has never gotten as famous, I guess, or as popular among even biography readers as I would have imagined. I mean, having read approximately one bio, admittedly, of her, I was like, it took over my life for about a week and a half. I was like, I can't believe I didn't know all of this stuff about this person. Like, she's out of control. I mean, the fact alone that she insisted on serving creme brulee as dessert every time someone came to her house for dinner, I was like, a hero for our times. I also insist on dessert every night. So relatable.
For sure. Is it creme brulee?
I didn't have creme brulee this evening, and that's a shame. But, I do admire that. Although she herself did not support suffrage, which is tough. That was a tough moment.
Teddy Roosevelt did. But it was after his presidency. So too little, too late.
His post-presidential life is like the definition of acting out.
Yes.
And potentially a midlife crisis.
I mean, he had a lot of crises.
True.
So something I'm really curious about, because people ask this question in many different ways, and I know that you've also been asked this question in a lot of different ways. I think Teddy Roosevelt, for a lot of people, is not so different from someone like Elizabeth Cady Stanton, where they're sort of a problematic fave. And I think we live between these different cultures where for some people they would say, I don't have problematic faves because they're my faves, so they're inherently not problematic, which is not always useful. And then you have people who just say, well, Susan B. Anthony is canceled. And that cuts the conversation off as well. So I think both are ways of foreclosing further analysis. I think Teddy Roosevelt is one of those people where, depending on which piece of your story you're looking at, you feel very differently about it. And they all go together because he's one person and we can't unpack it. A lot of people asked us when we put out a call for questions about white supremacy in the women's suffrage movement. And just because it also happened today, something like the Susan B. Anthony Barbie, what do we do with that? Right?
I think that's a really good question. And I think we're still figuring that out. One thing that I think is really important is that we hold our male historical figures to the same level of scrutiny as we hold our female historical figures to. So it's not fair to critique Susan B. Anthony and not critique someone like George Washington for, ownership of enslaved people. So I think that we are going to have to develop a more complex understanding of these historical figures that both values the things that they did contribute, because someone like Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton did contribute significantly to the organization of a women's rights movement and the leadership of that. But as you already said, they had some really racist beliefs that drove some of their organizing, and it is disappointing. But I think that setting them aside entirely is a mistake as well, because it's really useful to look to the past and realize that women have tried to organize women's rights movements before us, and realize that there's a longer lineage of this work. And I think that the value for us today is to look at them and say, I don't like the way they did it, and I can do it differently. So I think that's one way we can kind of both value their work and critique it.
I mean, I'm interested in how suffrage and suffragists have been commemorated since the passage of the amendment, even before. I mean, do you see kind of long durée changes in how we think about them? Is it gone from a very kind of oversimplified narrative of they were erased or not memorialized at all to then lionized to now complicated, or how do you see it?
It's really changed. So the first major history of the suffrage movement actually came out in 1881. So long before the passage of the 19th Amendment. However, by then, women in Wyoming Territory were voting. There were Western states thinking about it, and plenty of places where women were actually voting in local school and city elections. So it was on it, in the early stages, but it's changed a lot. So the History of Women's Suffrage was edited by Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Susan B. Anthony, and Matilda Jocelyn Gage, and they were very selective about who counted as a suffragist. And it was really a significant focus on white women, no men, no women of color. I shouldn't say no, because there are certainly some allusions to someone like Sojourner Truth. But even white women who were founding the competing organization to them received very little attention in this text. And so that's it. It started out very differently, and I think it's very different in 2020.
I feel like it's like melodramatic to throw to Jo March, but I like genuinely think that Louisa May Alcott hit it right on the head when she said, through Jo, women should not vote because they are angels, but because they are people.
Yes.
And I think part of what you're saying too is like there is this inherent hypocrisy in wanting suffragists to be perfect when it only makes perfect sense that they were products of their time. And I also say that to say there were also Black suffragists who were products of their time, who were thinking 30 years ahead. And it's just part of our education that we haven't learned about them in the same way because they weren't given access to the same cultural capital to publish books.
Yes. And it's also fair to say that, Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton were products of their time. So was Lucy Stone, who was collaborating on a much greater scale with Black women. So was Jane Addams, who helped found the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Unfortunately, that didn't always translate into suffrage work. So it's, on the one hand, it's okay to hold, these historical figures to other standards, because there are certainly examples of women who were thinking more broadly about equality than just white women's right to vote. But yeah, it's a tough situation. And you're right to point out that we're just now learning about so many suffragists that had kind of been lost for a long time.
So someone asked us a question about Alice Paul, and it's pretty short and sweet, but it's how relevant is she really? And I think that's actually I think it's a really good question because it gets at this kind of divisiveness in the early 20th century, right before the 19th Amendment is actually ratified.
Yes, I think Alice Paul is quite important, actually, maybe to the disappointment of this question asker. So you just mentioned Jo March's argument for suffrage, and that's an argument that suffragists really made, particularly in the mid-19th century, and then it kind of fades out of fashion. But Alice Paul brings up that argument again in the 1910s. Like, she's arguing that women need the right to vote because they're equal, not because they're going to be great, better mothers. And so that's one really valuable thing that she does. But the even more valuable thing, for my research and my analysis of the way that media is part of the suffrage movement, Alice Paul brings much needed life and attention and press to the movement. She goes to Britain. She learns how to kind of create these popular protests. She brings them back to the United States. She's the first, she, in the National Women's Party, launched the first ever picket at the White House. And, in 2020, in the 21st century in general, you're always going to see someone protesting at the White House. So I think that she is quite important in the history of the suffrage movement.
Allison, any other burning questions from listeners right now, or?
So many that I love, but one is, are suffrage plays funny? Or like, do you enjoy, I've actually paraphrased some of these questions to my own liking. However, I'm thinking of people like Inez Mulholland and like the real theatrical elements of suffrage. And like, have you read them? Are there any that you're going to be recreating in a tableau with your friends, 19th century style with us? I
would love to. And I think that if the pandemic had not happened, we would have seen a lot more of that this year. There are some fabulous suffrage plays that you can find the screenplays for. There's a book of them even. they were really funny, right? Like that's how you bring people over to a cause. You entertain them, and they like make fun of gender roles. I've had my students do a play from I think like the 1850s or something about, you know, men and women not doing what they're supposed to do. And it's silly, it's fun. And yes, they're worth taking a look at.
I don't want to say I don't believe you that they're funny, but in my experience, things in history that were funny 150 years ago, I read them and I'm like, I can't follow these jokes. Like they're way too inside.
That's a fair concern. And I think that one of the things that's interesting about like suffrage plays, because they're always critiquing gender roles. And it's even in the 21st century when like someone on SNL or whatever other sketch show or whatever, when a man dresses up as a woman, we know that that's supposed to be funny. I mean, there was just a comment going around on Twitter about Joe Biden's mask, you know, wearing a mask and how that was connected to like, he should just wear a purse, you know, as this like feminized, emasculating thing. And so I think that, you know, this gender swapping humor is still kind of part of our culture. So maybe that resonates.
Can I just say, normalize, I don't care if it's a purse, I don't carry a purse. Normalize everyone carrying their own stuff. No. Backpacks are central to my relationship with my husband because I turned to him and I was like, I'm not carrying your stuff. No, just like as like a basic thing where it was like, we will purchase accoutrement that we can take on vacation because I have a lot of needs. I'm very pale. I need sunblock. I need hand sanitizer. And so does everyone. So we will be sharing, you know. So regardless, I've read a few different suffrage plays and they were not funny. And I also totally believe you. But I think part of why they were not funny, they never really took off, so they weren't the popular one. I've read Alva Vanderbilt's unsuccessful suffrage play from the early 20th century and Harriet Hanson Robinson's also unsuccessful late 19th century play. And they just did not get it done for me. And I think part of it, though, is we've also talked about this with old-fashioned films. They're so overwrought. Like they're leaving nothing to the imagination. You have to imagine like lighting is probably very poor. Makeup is like definitely poisoning you in real time. It's not great. Like I couldn't find anything funny about it. But then there are other writers from the suffrage movement, like Lucy Stone, I find to be just so powerful because she's so out there in the same way that a John Brown is out there. Like, I think if they existed today, they would be on Instagram with like 25-part stories.
And like weird collage work that only they understand. And then they're like, I'm unpacking this in my IG live show. Like, if you don't tune in Sunday at 9, like you're not real. Like you're not really part of the movement.
Lucy Stone would not be posting any selfies, but her daughter would be posting photographs of her mother is how it would work.
That's like, I mean, that's a fascinating generational relationship, like within a single movement to make your daughter, like, I don't know how much the daughter just felt compelled to like remember her mom and make sure her mom had her place in history, or if the mom on the side was like, and you will make sure that I end up in every history book. Or else.
It could have been a little interesting, but Alice Stone Blackwell, her daughter, really believed in that. She really thought it was important that people remember her mother and always said over and over that her mother didn't want to be remembered, which I think is like part of this posturing around famous 19th century women so that it doesn't look like they're overstepping and want to be famous in any way. So
that's what I really loved about your book was that it really hit home to me, like vanity as something that's so central, not as a negative trait, but they had to consciously say, I am going to be photographed. You know, like Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton doing that photo shoot, which is kind of insane in hindsight, where they're both like pretending to read a book together and like, you know, like these goofy poses where you're like, what is this? But trying to like hit you over the head with like, we're learned and we are the centers of this movement. Like we're hyping ourselves. We're a 2-woman hype team. And you might look at that and say like, that's crazy. But first of all, like men do that all the time. So just saying that, but that they had to do that to further these beliefs that they've believed in so strongly. And that wasn't a bad thing. And it wasn't really about their egos per se. I'm sure on some level it was, but I don't know, like that, even though on some level, I guess I've always seen these photos, I didn't really think about kind of the motivation behind it.
Right. And that's a really important point because a lot of women you would have gone to a photographer like Napoleon Sereny in the 1870 session that you're referencing. They would have gone to that photographer. They would have had their photograph taken. They would have gotten a lovely little carte de visite, which are these tiny little cheap photographs. They were very popular in the mid 19th century, but they would have given them to friends, family members, and they would have put them in photo albums. But Anthony and Stanton had far larger audiences. And Sojourner Truth is another person who's really thinking about getting her photograph in front of people. And it's because there are very few portraits of individual women that are part of popular culture in the 19th century. Very few that recognize them as important.
I think with Stone, part of what her story brings up for me and like thinking about Cornelia as a speaker, and that she probably would have had some kind of training in elocution. And we have a lot of Smithies who listen to this show. So we've just decided right now that she went to Smith, because I think that tracks.
We're owning it.
I think it's fine. But I think part of what's so interesting about Stone and other people of that century, and also like the more you read of someone like a Frederick Douglass, like the power of the word and being able to speak, and, you know, being a good orator is something that I think about a lot. Like what makes a person a good public speaker? What do they do? How does gender play into all of that? You know, like what kind of voices do people want to listen to? And I kind of think there's probably some false modesty or some, you know, gendered historical modesty with Stone, but I also think there's something so powerful to saying, like, I want you to value me for the words that I put out into the world instead of what I look like. And I think Jane Addams, because we've talked about this recently, like making her autobiography the story of the place she made is a similar kind of move. Like there is a thing of, oh, you know, I'm not important. There's a deferential piece, but I think it's also saying like, I want to be valued for this thing I do instead of who I am. But that actually wasn't working. You know, like, you know, Douglas is like this really powerful orator, but then people want to see him. And he's this kind of perfect hybrid of like, he gets it, that people want to see him, and that his humanity kind of hinges, unfortunately, on people looking at him as well as hearing and reading him.
Exactly. Because in the 19th century, Frederick Douglass, as a Black man, a very well-spoken Black man, is in some ways considered to be a curiosity. And so is Lucy Stone. There was a ton of cartoons, a couple of them specifically like imagining what Lucy Stone looked like. And one of them just had her head as like a stone itself.
Tough.
And so
tough look. The 19th century was a wild, very weird time. And I say that as a compliment, mostly.
Yes, yeah. And so when you're thinking about Douglass and Lucy Stone, they are really challenging. In order to challenge these stereotypes, racist, sexist stereotypes, that's why Anthony and Stanton and Truth, you know, distribute their photographs, and that's why Lucy Stone isn't quite as well known and doesn't kind of like gain that recognition that she deserves, because she just never takes it to the next level to get herself out there. It'd be kind of like someone, you know, on Instagram, not ever posting a photograph of themselves. It's kind of like a little, like, okay.
I'm laughing because my wife's Instagram account, she refuses to be in it. When I first met her, I looked at her Instagram and I was like, I don't know, I'm seeing a lot of photos of like hills and trees, and like she likes the outdoors.
Was she trying to be a women's rights leader though?
Well, she did go to Smith, so I don't know. Like, maybe. I guess it's part of it. Could be.
I have also never appeared on my own Instagram.
That's true.
You know.
Allison's even more dramatic about that than Anna. Although I think it's probably the same. It's part of Allison's mystique.
I'm thinking though, as you were talking too, like there's that famous indictment when Ida B. Wells goes to Europe and people are saying she's going on that trip for an income, not an outcome, which I feel like is something that you would see written on Twitter today, but it was written, you know, 130 years ago. And it's this thing of like people automatically being suspicious of her as a powerful and smart Black woman promoting herself when actually she was promoting a cause.
Yes. Yeah. I think that suspicion is particularly centered on women. And I think that maybe that's the case in the 21st century as well. But I think that's an important connection.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking as you're talking about AOC and like the way people talk about how she presents publicly and saying like, oh, she's just doing this for her own self-promotion, not because she's here to promote this cause. So it seems like that's sort of a through line.
Yes, it definitely is. And she's a great example, as are many other, new, relatively recently elected female politicians, of how female political leaders are really trying to kind of reinvent how to be a public figure, make themselves appear more authentic, less, they're still walking the tightrope of likability and, masculinity. But I think someone like AOC is doing a really good job of making herself seem like a human. And it's really pleasant.
I agree. Yeah, I like her Instagram live videos where she's just sort of making dinner and seems like a person. It's very relatable, even though Allison H and I don't cook. So in a way, that part's not relatable, but
yeah, I think that the way she styles herself is really interesting, right? So on the one hand, she'll like write about her skin care routine. And on the other hand, after Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, she created a video and made the choice to like put on a blazer for that video, right? And like, just like she's like combining this like very feminine conversation that people, our age are having right now. And also with this, like then shifting to like more of a masculine symbol of authority and leadership in a different video like that. I think it's really interesting the way that she kind of is really aware of that.
There's some politicians from the Midwest that show up on my page on TikTok all the time. And for me, it's frankly such a turnoff, because I imagine that they have a job to do and I'm not interested in their sneakers. And I think it's fine. And I think it's a tactic, and I'm not criticizing those individuals. I really am interested in what do you have to say. And I would always rather see a polished speech than you just going off the dome on the train. But I think like people have to balance those different approaches. Like, I just know that I would prefer to watch something that was polished and put together by a team, but people now interpret authenticity differently. Like, I understand that someone like John F. Kennedy didn't write those speeches, but I appreciate the way that they were delivered, right? Or like, I'm interested in that presentation, but I don't think that's going to help you in 2020.
I think that you are hitting on something that is a real tension in politics right now. There's a divide between people who want kind of a sense of closeness with their political leaders, the sense that this is their real selves, versus a more poised, a more collected, a more strategic, mapped out speech. I think that we're at a moment where it's not just thinking about the ideas that we share and don't share, but also the style of politics is very much at odds.
Do you think that the current style of politics has affected the ways that the suffrage commemoration has sort of rolled out?
Yes, we've seen it come up a little bit. I've noticed that political parties, specifically the Republican Party, actually has really claimed the 19th Amendment as its own victory, which I think is really interesting. And, as a historian, like you guys know, it's like the Republican Party of 2020 is not the same as the Republican Party of 1920 or the same as the Republican Party of 1870. It's just, I barely see them as like the same thing, but I think that for people who really believe in like the party system and like feel strongly affiliated with a particular party, they feel like that's their team, and that's, how it's shaped over time.
What is your take on the suffrage movies that we've been given? Like, can you give us some fierce feedback on popular representations of suffrage?
Well, the most popular representation of suffrage is, of course, from Mary Poppins.
Yeah. I mean, talk about a suffragist who's beautiful.
Or was she a suffragette?
I think she's a jet.
I guess she's a jet. I don't know, guys. I'm all mixed up inside, but that song is iconic. That was my first introduction to a suffragette. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I had any sense of what they were talking about when I first saw that. And when you really listen to the song, like knowing about the suffrage movement and how suffragettes were kind of demeaned and mocked and kind of looked at as like these scary figures, when you listen to the song again, it's like, oh, this isn't really a very positive song.
I mean, my question to you is, do you think Mary Poppins was even clued into that conversation? Or do you think because of her, whatever her powers were, that she basically was like, I don't even need suffrage. Like, this is so beneath me.
She doesn't even need suffrage.
Okay.
She is greater than suffrage.
Have you seen the Enola Holmes movie that just came out on Netflix?
I have.
Has a British suffragette. Very too brief for my liking. I actually was very into it. Allison, I don't know if you've seen this, but it has a jujitsu moment.
It does.
Like, you go to a secret suffragette jujitsu hangout meetup space. I don't know if I'm describing that accurately. Please feel free to correct me.
You totally are. And it's kind of sad because you know there's a connection between suffrage and jujitsu, but they don't make it clear in the movie that there were actually suffragists learning how to do jujitsu as they were like doing these public protests. And I thought that was so disappointing.
I had a photo that I blew up sort of illegally at like a Kinko's of that photo. It's a cartoon of the suffragette who knew jujitsu, that like famous image. So I'm all about this because I was obsessed with that like in high school, weirdly. Not really sure why. I've never pursued jujitsu, but I loved that moment. But it did make me think, like, I'm actually sort of feeling we've never really gotten the popular representation of suffrage that's really satisfied me. Except for that like 2 minutes of a film in which it's never directly addressed.
Yeah, I think that, you know, there's Iron Jawed Angels, which is an HBO movie focused on largely Alice Paul. And I show that one to my students and they are fascinated by it because it's one of the best representations of the parades and pickets and arrests and jailings and force feedings. It's like highly emotional. However, Alice Paul has like a love interest in it. It is very Hollywoodized. And then there's the Suffragette. I think that's the other one that came out a couple of years ago. And that one is interesting, but I think you're right. We haven't gotten a fabulous suffrage pick yet, but there is actually a book called The Woman's Hour by Elaine Weiss that has that was like optioned and is being turned into a series, like supported by like Hillary Clinton and Steven Spielberg. So like maybe something interesting will come out of it. We'll see.
What do we have to do to get you hired as like the historical consult on that production?
I don't know, but please find out.
We need you as like an American Girls podcast correspondent, boots on the ground. What's Hillary like? What kind of pantsuit does she wear to set?
White.
Et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I mean, suffrage white, right? That's what she accepted the nomination in. And I think that she would be on brand.
But I think that what you're saying about these representations makes me think about that really great quote other Allison mentioned from Louisa May Alcott about they're not angels, like they're suffragists because they're not angels, like they're real people. Too many of the representations to me presuppose that we will only accept representations of suffragists as angels instead of like fully formed people, including frankly queer people, even though that term would not have made sense in that time. Like their relationships, you know, we would now read in that way, and often the popular representations erase that too.
They really do. And I think that there's a new book coming out eventually by Wendy Rouse, who is going to tell the story about sexuality in the suffrage movement that we have been needing forever. And, you know, as you say, you know, Susan B. Anthony had like intimate relationships with women. There's like she burned a lot of her papers. You know, all the historians, I think, are angry about that. But she like had a very particular version of herself she wanted to leave behind. But luckily, Anna Dickinson, who she wrote some letters to, did not. So we have some like very interesting letters between them. But I mean, she's just one example, right? There are so many other suffragists who, you know, led lives where they were partnered with women very obviously. I mean, Carrie Chapman Catt was buried with like her female partner. So instead of her husband.
Oh, I love that as a power move. Like, oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah, it really tells you a lot.
It tells a story. Wow. I want to be on that cemetery tour. Wow. Amazing. I would love to say it's a shame that Susan B. Anthony burned a lot of her papers, but I also know that Allison and I have a third friend who very early on in our friendship, we were like, you are the person we pick. If we're taken out, you have to immediately delete our Gmail. Like, don't read it. Just get into both of our Gmails, burn it.
Yeah. I mean,
it's the ground.
It is reasonable to think about like what you would want people to find of yours and what you wouldn't want people to find. Nonetheless, as a historian, I want all of Susan B. Anthony's letters.
Same. Yeah.
So you mentioned suffrage white in the context of pantsuits, but we did get a lot of questions about race. And as kind of like before because we are going to give you like a quick 5 OG challenge, but could you talk a little bit about Black suffragists and women of color suffragists, and they don't have to be pre-1920, that people haven't heard about that you think everybody should have heard about? Because we got like 6 different versions of that question, but I think it's something that people, it's like they know that the version of suffrage that they learned in school was very white and middle or upper class, but they don't know who to look at outside of those names.
Yeah, I think one of my favorites is Sojourner Truth. I've mentioned her a couple of times. I'm just going to mention her again. And if you're interested in kind of seeing an exhibit that I actually helped create, it's called Truth Be Told. And it's sponsored by Pivotal Ventures and Evoke. And I think if you Google that, that's accessible. But it's specifically about Black women in the suffrage movement. So Sojourner Truth is a fascinating figure who is an anti-slavery and women's rights activist, lecturer, and another person from that same time period who I think is well worth looking into is Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, both a poet, a writer, but also a really fantastic speaker. I mean, if you want to find some great 19th century inspiring quotes, read some Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. Those will be great on Instagram, right? Ida B. Wells, we already mentioned, but Mary Church Terrell, I just found so fascinating when I was researching her. The very first biography of her ever is coming out later in 2020 by Allison Parker. It's called Unceasing Militant, and I cannot wait to read it. And, you know, actually the Library of Congress just both digitized and transcribed all of her papers. So those are actually fully accessible. So yeah, Mary Church Terrell, like born during the Civil War and, you know, first president of the National Association of Colored Women, and, you know, lived into her 80s. In the 1950s, she was like picketing segregated restaurants in Washington, D.C. She lived an extraordinary life.
Yeah, she was someone definitely in your book that I remember thinking, I can't believe I don't know more about this person. And I definitely want to know more about this person. It blows my mind that we don't have a biography of her as of yet.
We do have an autobiography of her, which is the most, you know, it's tellings that just like kind of Susan B. Anthony, right? Terrell had like a very particular story of herself she wanted to tell. She was a particularly well-off woman. She's one of the first Black women to receive an undergraduate degree. She has a lot to prove in that autobiography.
I think we wanted to kind of ask you a challenge, if that's okay.
Yes.
Okay. So there was a podcast about suffrage, and it was called The Magic Sash, and these children got to go back in time. So we're going to pretend that you also have one.
Okay.
And so it says books for women instead of votes for women. Is that okay?
Okay.
Okay.
I'm ready. I hope.
So I think you were born for this. So also, I think what we've learned is in a half-hour conversation, I went from Allison to other Allison. So that's been noted.
You have Allison's phone number. Like, we both have deficits we're working with, okay?
I know.
You guys can text about this later. I won't know what you're talking about because I'm not on the thread.
So I basically made a list of like a bunch of resources that people could read that are about the time periods that each of the 5 OGs lived in. And I'm open, like, how do we want to do this? Like, do we want to like pick what we think are like the essential ones, or like what should the challenge be?
I think what we could do is say, like, which one do we think the doll needs first? Like, what's the most essential to what's happening with her, like her issues.
Yes. And Allison always has the trump card. So we'll do a few for each, and you always have the trump card of like none. She needs to start over here. Does that work for everyone?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm excited, Allison, and other Allison, please feel free to begin the questions whenever you
I would love
ready.
to. So Felicity Merriman, Colonial Gal, 1774 to 1775. Which of these does she need the most? Rosemary Zagari, Revolutionary Backlash. Kathleen Brown, Good Wives, Nasty Wenches, and Anxious Patriarchs. Edmund Morgan, American Slavery, American Freedom, or Sally Roshwagner, Sisters in Spirit, the Haudenosaunee influence on early American feminists.
Damn.
I definitely have a soft spot for Rosemary Zagari's book. I mean, how can you not get excited about learning that like women were voting in New Jersey after it became a state and were voting there until 1808? That's fascinating. I was fascinated by it. You know, Felicity could have, if she moved to New Jersey, she could have been voting even before anyone else.
You know, she could have been leading a one-woman party for equine rights, equine candidacy for Penny to take office in some way.
I think so.
Bold, brave.
Possible.
So our next gal is Josefina, who we know and remember and love and cherish. And I kind of went like an unexpected direction with some of these. So don't be nervous. Okay, so just based on her really unconventional and I thought bizarre relationship with Patrick, I put in Joanne Freeman's Affairs of Honor because I just feel like she's into like weird white guy stuff.
Yep.
Catherine Algor, Parlor Politics, my apologies to Kath. Kathleen Cahill's forthcoming book, which we did just talk about, or Kathleen Marino's Feminism for the Americas, or Celebrating the Right of Women to Vote in New Mexico, a University of New Mexico research guide. That was kind of for me.
Interesting.
Those all sound amazing. I think that Kathleen Cahill's book, Recasting the Vote, I mean, mostly because I can't wait to read it, so I feel like surely Josefina would have been excited to read it too.
I think that's the right title, but I just want to say, like, in the spirit of reading against the text, like, Affairs of Honor is technically like blowing the whistle on the culture of violence among white male politicians, but I do think it would give Josefina an understanding of what she was up against with Tia Dolores. So I'm just putting that out there.
Yes.
That's fair.
I think so.
Okay.
Kirsten, we also I kind of took it to a different place because I feel like as an adult, Kirsten was had such a good heart that she was willing to stretch and that she could become a harsh critic of white supremacy in her own lifetime. So that's where I went with her. I gave her these choices: Ida B. Wells' Crusade for Justice, an official Park article on women's suffrage in the West, a little closer to home, an exhibit on organizing for the vote from Minnesota Historical, or more recent, Stephanie Jones Rogers' They Were Her Property.
All of those are fantastic. And I think I would want her to read something about, I think that reading about women in the women's voting rights in the West would be fantastic, because then maybe she'd get it going even earlier, right? Although all of those would be fantastic choices.
Follow-up question: which Prince song would Kirsten most benefit from hearing as an adult?
I have no idea. Why don't you tell me what you
I'm
think?
just going to say, I'm going to answer my own question and say that, like, I would let her listen to Raspberry Beret just as, like,
I knew it.
gateway drug. But it's only because I don't think she could handle Darling Nikki just straight out the gate.
No.
But I think that that's where she should end up. Just saying.
Yeah.
You know, people can contradict me. I'm okay with that, but I'm just saying.
I apologize. This has turned into like the longest, worst day of your life with this challenge, but it's almost over. So I did also make a note because I started tracking. I was like, which of these women would have had any chance to vote? And if Felicity stayed in Virginia, despite her privilege, she would not. Josefina would not. Kirsten would not in her lifetime unless she lived to be like pretty senior. Addie. I gave her fewer choices, but they were very carefully chosen because I think her stories are like so well researched. I think she would do her homework and have a tight list. Nell Irvin Painter, Sojourner Truth, A Life, A Symbol. Ellen Carroll Du Bois, Suffrage, Women's Long Battle for the Vote. Or, a personal fave, Catherine Kish Sklar's Women's Rights Emerges with the Anti-Slavery Movement, A Short History with Documents, because I just assume Addie's a teacher of some kind.
I have definitely used that in class, the Sklar Bedford St. Martin reader. It's fantastic. And I mean, but you also cannot go wrong with Nell Painter's Sojourner Truth. Honestly, Sojourner Truth is fascinating, and it is definitely the definitive biography of her at the moment of Sojourner Truth. So, I mean,
That was a great choice.
You know,
Thank you.
All great.
Gotta give Addie someone to look up.
I think so. Besides the mirror.
I was going to say it's her in 10 years or whatever Matthew McConaughey's.
Yes. Okay, I love that. For Samantha, we chose kind of a mix. Adam Hochschild's recent book, Rebel Cinderella, about a socialist queen. Annalise Orlick's Common Sense and a Little Fire. Allison Lang, picturing political power. Or Susan Ware's Why They Marched.
I mean, I'm going to choose my book. I'm going to give
Thank
Samantha.
you. Yes.
I read her
And then I was going to yell
it.
at you.
Yeah, she should of course read my book.
I agree.
Totally agree.
Last and literally least, because I was running out of steam, Molly McIntyre, Girl of 1944. Linda Kerber's No Constitutional Right to Be Ladies, and or probably just Martha S. Jones' Vanguard.
I mean, Vanguard.
Have to.
The problem is you gave me so many fantastic titles here. It was a real tough one just throughout the quiz. But Martha Jones' Vanguard is, the latest, greatest on women in politics.
Wow. Well, you handled that quiz like a champ. Thank you for engaging that. And your answers were instructive. And I feel like I wished in particular Felicity would hit the books and see where we go from there.
Yeah. And maybe move to New Jersey.
Both
and,
depend.
you really had to be a widow. So probably marry. Her husband must very quickly die. And then she could vote.
Ben had no chance.
There you go.
He'd probably get lost and then never be heard from again because his maps make no sense. So he would literally hand it out and people would be like, I don't know where this is. I don't begin to know how to find you and I don't care. So I'm moving on. She would wait till he could be legally declared dead and then vote.
That's exactly what she would do. Make sure she had enough property from him first.
Whoa. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because she needed a certain amount of property to vote. So.
I like that.
Allison, is there anything we haven't talked about that you would like to share with people or to promote in addition to your book, which is wonderful?
Well, I think that everyone is wondering what you guys think of Samantha now, because there was a lot of, concern, apprehension, shall we say, about Samantha in particular. But as a listener, it seems like you guys have enjoyed Samantha.
Before I answer this question, I need to know is which one you identify with. Which
It's
AD are you?
Samantha.
Oh, God. Okay, well...
She's a was and an is. She had Samantha and she is a Samantha, which is a beautiful trajectory.
It is. What I would say is that the experience of reading these books, Allison and I have not laughed this hard in a long time. So I'm not sidestepping the question about how I feel about her, although I think I have more respect or I have more empathy for her after rereading these books. But I will say the toughest moment in a book, any book I've ever read, is clearly like, can Nellie be the maid? And they're like, no, we want to adopt her. And it's just like, having to sit with her assumption that was like the highest high Nellie could get, which actually makes sense for her class worldview, was like, what a tough way to end this series. Frankly, that will be with me till the day I die, as will Guard's love of automobiles. I don't know. Allison, how do you feel?
I have loved rereading Samantha. I think genuinely we've changed our mind on every character, right? We've changed our take on everything because we read them completely differently. Like, we're completely different. I mean, the kind of strange thing about being us is like we have to defend our 8-year-old opinions on dolls like once a day on social media, or like reaffirm that we do know how to do math of when these not real people would have been born, which like we do know how to do. I think what was like really kind of surprising to me is, by a total accident of fate and history, we read her at the perfect time, because I think Samantha is a great conversation starter about white privilege and how you use the privilege that you have relative to other people. And I think I really, really loved her heart and the way that she cared about family and the way that she struggled to make sense of that for herself. Like, I think I projected a lot onto Samantha, where it was like she had really nice stuff. And now that I look back, it's like she had nice stuff, but in her story, she's a very different person than I think I made her out to be.
Yeah, and I think I also just erased or forgot how much of her story has grief at the center as like the motivating force, and how sad that is. But I also think as a reading experience like this, I can't speak for other Allison, but these books hit at a moment when I was hitting burnout with everything going on in the world. Like, I just had absolute fatigue, could not take anything in. And to read these books, which were so insane on so many different levels, like the fact that the illustrations of the twins are exactly like Annie, like Valerie Tripp, ... like all of it. I think it gave me such a healthy escape at the exact right moment, that I'm really grateful that it worked out this way. And it kind of reminds me of like being in college and being a senior in college. We graduated during like the Great Recession. And that's when I started watching Keeping Up with the Kardashians, which also makes no sense. Like, why would someone with no money want to watch people who have way too much, who have no mission? Seemingly like it's impossible to know what's driving that. And yet I couldn't get enough of it. And it was just sort of like the bomb I needed, like at that moment. And I think for Allison too, like we both watched it and we've been rewatching it now. But so it was like a perfect reading experience too. How about you, as like a person who identifies as Samantha? Like, in some ways the stakes are highest for you.
When I was rereading it, I didn't remember that much from it. But I will say that when I got to the part where her neighbor put salt in the ice cream, I like had a visceral memory of reading about that before. And I remembered very little else, but it's fascinating that was like something that had stuck with me.
You know what? That's going to stick with me forever, because I take birthdays seriously. And when people mess up other people's birthdays that I care about, it's like, I will never forget this. Period. That was so heinous. Yeah. I also don't know what function he actually served as a character, because he just drops out of the books. Like, I think the only critique I would say of the series is that it does suffer from the multiple authors. And yes, that's not the fault of any of the characters, obviously, but I do think they suffered because, you know, you have the author of the first book who sets up sort of like one trajectory. And then, as we all know, like Val Tripp comes in and just is like, no, like, this series has been at a 3. I'm taking it to a 12. There's going to be major events I'm not even going to cover. I'll just allude to them because I don't have time. So it just reads kind of all over the place. Not a bad thing, but it is a little uneven.
Yeah, it is. But there's a puppy in there. I mean, it really... There's a lot happening in this book.
It allowed us to think or revisit the great Nellies of history. So
that's true.
I'll always be grateful for that.
If people want to reach out to Allison, if you have places that you want people to reach you or plug things.
Sure. So I am on Instagram at Professor Lange, Lange. and on Twitter as aklang1. But there's a lot of stuff on my website, which is allisonklang.com, which has links to the Truth Be Told website, a variety of articles and all kinds of like upcoming talks and things that I've got. So that's where to find me.
And is there a pop culture thing that you're obsessed with right now that you would like to recommend to our listeners? We're always looking for fun things to watch and read and take in.
I think that Enola Holmes is a great place to start. I'm fascinated by the Susan B. Anthony Barbie and seriously considering adding it to my Centennial collection.
I think you have to. Couldn't you write that off on your taxes as a work expense?
Surely I could.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah. I think it was designed for you. Like, I think you actually have to buy that.
I probably do. I think that, you know, the only other thing that I would want to like remind people is that we should vote in the upcoming election.
Yes.
This is, you know, after studying these suffragists for so many years, people wouldn't organize so much to oppose this movement if it weren't such a powerful thing to have. So I think that's, you know, an important reminder.
That's right. Are you doing a remote ballot? I just got my ballot in the mail today, so I'm very excited. How about you? Are you going in person? What's the plan?
I think I'm going to vote in person early. I think that's my current plan because I did request an absentee ballot, but I think voting in person might be more reliable.
Yes, so I've heard.
How about you guys? Absentee ballot for you, Mary?
I'm definitely doing absentee ballot just because, you know, I've got some autoimmune stuff, so I'm trying to limit my exposure to large groups when I can. But I'm very excited to do that tomorrow and just drop it off and bring it right to town hall.
Perfect.
So, Allison, what are you doing?
I am voting in person, just like Lydia Taft, the first woman voter in Massachusetts who lived in Uxbridge.
Wow.
So I voted in person in the primaries a few weeks ago, and I felt really good about the protocols that my community had in place. So I am going to vote, and I will be doing that on November 3rd.
Exciting.
I don't know why I said that like everyone else is voting at a different time, but I mean, we are on different timelines.
Yeah, I mean, Massachusetts is voting early in the next couple weeks. So
yes.
Everyone's voting all over the place right now, anytime in the next like month.
It's insane, truly, but important. Well, thank you so much. This has been such a dream.
Thank you. It's been really fun chatting with you guys.
Well, thank you to our friend. I'm calling her my friend. I mean, I feel like I'm about to get her phone number. Allison Lang. I'll see you on the group text. Thanks so much for being here, for being such a wonderful guest, and for your book, which we highly recommend to all of our listeners. Before we close, we just have a couple announcements that we really are excited to share with you. The first is, thanks to everyone who's bought merchandise from us thus far. But we're so excited to note that we are relaunching our store today. So if you go to our store, go to our website, AmericanGirlsPod.com, and in the show notes, you'll see a link as well. We're so excited that now we can offer t-shirts, sweatshirts, tapestries, lunch boxes, laptop sleeves, mugs, like you name it. You can get all the designs on some really cool stuff. And if you're staying indoors like I am, you're investing in a lot of sweatshirts these days. So, it feels like the right time.
Yes. And we're really grateful, again, to the artist Brie Morris, who did a lot of our designs. And so really go check that out. It's just another way also to support the show. Allison taught us a lot about the power of promotion, right?
That's right. She did.
So we do just want to also mention that we have a Patreon, and we thank everyone who supports us there so much. It's such a joy to make those episodes. We do put out an extra episode every month for the people who subscribe to our Patreon. It's $3. And part of what we have going on over there has evolved. So we haven't talked about it in a long time. But we usually read something or we do something extra every single month, and we make an episode about it. We've done everything from the Dear America book about the Titanic to Jessica Simpson's memoir to this month, it was such a scary and fun delight to reread The Witch of Blackbird Pond. And so part of what we have going on the Patreon is we do polls where we ask folks if they'd like to do a watch along with us. We also post that extra bonus episode. And part of why we do the watch along is we have a Discord channel. If you are like me, you did not know what Discord was until we created this on Patreon, but listener and friend Joelle helped us set it up. I promise it's very easy and there are very clear directions. You're basically just in a big group chat with us and a bunch of patrons watching something at the same time. I can do it. I mean, my Courtney doll can even do it. She's on there.
Proud of her.
And we have some exciting things coming up on there. We want to add some extra channels, which again, it's almost just sort of like good facilitated group chat rooms on The Bachelor. And there's also going to be a space for D&D that will be facilitated by listeners. So it's just kind of a space where you can come and we chat or we watch things together.
Exactly. And, you know, we've had so much fun watching a Mary-Kate and Ashley movie. We rewatched Annie not long ago. We are going to be watching Hocus Pocus soon as a group. And people in these chats just make me laugh so hard. So it's really just a space for community and fun. So we really encourage you to check it out if that sounds of interest to you. And if you're already a member of the Patreon and you would like a Discord channel to kind of talk about a topic that you think a lot of other listeners would be interested in, like The Bachelor or D&D or what have you, please get in touch with us because, you know, we really want to facilitate this community in a way that's equitable and kind of like meeting the needs of our listeners.
Mary, I have one last question for you.
Uh-oh, yes.
It's not a bad one. What state is Felicity Merriman from?
The colony of Virginia.
That's so interesting that you bring that up. So one of our listeners reached out to wish, or asking us to wish his wife, Virginia, a happy first anniversary for their first year of marriage. So we wanted to wish Virginia and Mr. Evergreen a very, very happy evergreen marriage for the rest of their life. We hear that she's sort of a Josefina, which we love. So
into it.
We wanted to wish them a happy anniversary, and we're so honored that you wanted us to be a part of it.
Yeah, and we've heard that Virginia is a listener of the show. And so, hey, Virginia, thanks so much for tuning in. We so appreciate you listening. And, you know, I don't know what to say about having your first year of marriage being 2020 or mostly 2020, but I think what it means is if you can make it through 2020, you can make it through anything. So congratulations to you both and many future happy years together.
Totally agree. If you want to reach out to us, if you want to share any of your further feedback, you can write to us at americangirlspod@gmail.com. We love to hear from you there. You should also definitely check out our website, which has the information all about our store relaunch and a link to our Patreon, where you can join for $3 a month. You can find me at Allison Harks on all of the things, where you'll see photos of my cat and not me. And Mary, if folks want to get the latest about your skateboarding adventures or other things, where should they find you?
You know, if you want to see if I've finally been brave enough to order wheels for my skateboard, please find me at Mimi Mahoney on Instagram and at Mary Mahoney123 on Twitter.
Love.
And also, because of our Witch of Blackbird Pond journey, I want to make a sound map of everyone's memories of the book. So if you read that book and it made an impact on you, and you just even have a weird story or thing you remember about it, record a voice memo and email it to us at americangirlspod@gmail.com, and you can be part of the project. And please let us know if you would like to be credited by name or not. Thanks for listening. See you on the next episode.
Bye.